some great footage there, and I've got a lot of footage of foiling boats in seemingly lots and lots of control. Now, it might appear that that's because the sailors have got a high level of skill and that's why they're in a lot of control, but fundamentally beyond that, if you put one of those sailors into a boat which wasn't set up correctly, they would be looking decidedly average, with the boat crashing around a lot. Now, I've got a sample of a cross-section of a foiling system. We have the wand, we have the control rods that would run through the bow, we have, this is the right height adjuster that then links in to the top of the foil, the rod that runs through the main foil and down to the horizontal. So hopefully you can see that. If you want to come closer and get a better look, then by all means please do, because there's a small group there. And we're going to have a look at how all this interacts, and then how we set up the boat before we go sailing to ensure that it's not going to crash, it's going to be a stable sail. So as we just have a quick look now, we can see the wand is moving in its range here, and if you can see the pointer on the back of the flap, you can see that moving. And we've got a scale, and we can have a look at how some of these controls affect the movement of the flap. And the flap, like flap of an aeroplane, is going to control how high the boat rides and how stable that is. So we have a wand. Now there's a couple of pieces missing on this that you would have on the boat. There's a bungee that pulls the wand forward. We don't want that on for obvious reasons, but it does somehow, you can use the bungee tension to control the response as well. So we'll discuss that a little bit later in some troubleshooting. At the top of the foil mechanism, you can't see it very clearly, but there's what we call the gearing. The gearing adjusts the range of how much the flap moves for every unit of wand movement. As we come back to this side, we've got the right height adjuster, and this actually affects, if I now wind this now and hold the flap in one place, you can see the wand moving. Should be able to keep the wand to move. Can we see the wand moving? There's the wand moving there. So that affects the position of the wand relative to the flap. And the next thing we'll do is we'll have a look at how to set the boat up before we go sailing, and look at how we use that to adjust the position of the flap relative to the wand. So I'm going to set that kind of into about the middle of its range. And first of all, we'll just have a look at the effect of the flap for starters. So if I could do with an assistant actually. Someone who's good at reading numbers could come and assist me. Oh, thank you very much. I'm Simon. Penny, hi Penny. So if you could just, I'm going to move the wand around, and if you could just have a look at and just where the numbers are, if you could call out what numbers that's on. So if we start, let's just pick, there's a scale here, and I'm going to put the wand on to 20. So that's 20 and 12. So if I then move this to 10, 5. So we've got a range of 7 there against a range of 10 here. So just bear that in mind. Now I'm going to change the right height adjuster, and then we're going to see the effect that has on the wand. So if I come back here, and we're going to shorten the top rod. Now that should mean that we have less flapping. So if I now push this to back to 10, 14. So we've gone from 12 to 14. So what does this mean? This means that for that given flap position, the wand, when we change the right height, is further back. So before could you just tell me when that is? That was on what we were on 12, weren't we? When was that on 12? There. So we were on 5. So that put the wand back to 5. So we've moved the wand back 5 units by changing the position of the right height. What does that mean in real terms? It means that we've made more flap up, so the boat would foil lower. Or the boat would foil lower. Why is that? Because in the same flap position, the wand would be further back. The wand further back means this is our water line here. The wand is higher, so the boat would come down lower. Does that make sense? Vaguely makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to put this a little bit into the middle now. Just look at the effect of each control. So the control at the front, the gearing. If I wind the gearing so we have more gearing, that's making the lever here longer. So what does the gearing do? The gearing changes how much the flap moves for every position of one change. So if I look at this, we'll put this to 10 and we'll move to, let's go to 10 again, 20 to 10, so 10 units at the front. So Penny, what's that on now, reading 12, and we go to 10, it's reading 3. So 10 units here, we've got 7 and 2 is 9 units at the back. So, yeah, so 20 to 10, 3, and that's 12, so 9 units. So I'm now going to go to, that was a lot of gearing, so I now wind the gearing all the way up to very low gearing, and that's the amount of leverage that when the wand moves it exerts on the rod. So if you want to understand that better, have a closer look at the board here afterwards. So this is very low gearing. So if I start on 20, what number have we got there? 8. So we're going to do 10 units here. 3. So 8 to 3. So now we've gone 5. So we've gone from 9 units to 5 units. So we've got less response on the flap for the units as the wand moves. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of an idea of what each control does. I'm going to now go through the process that we would take to set the boat up before we go sailing. The first thing I do is I'm going to put the gearing into the middle setting. So I'm just going to wind that to the middle. Now, so this process is we've got the boat on its side, the foils are in, and we want to go sailing. When we launch to go sailing, I don't want the boat to be uncontrollable. I want to know that I can launch it and sail straight off the beach, and the boat isn't going to crash. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to try and find out what we're going to call neutral flap is. Now, it's a little bit arbitrary what neutral flap is. It's something along the lines of this curve between the flap and the section of the mainboard, then a smooth, fair shape. So when the flap is up, it's pretty obvious. Could you just have a look at that, Penny, and try and describe it? That we have flap up, that there's a definite curve upwards, and if I go flap down, there's a quite thin. So if I put it, and as I say, it's a little bit arbitrary, we're kind of a little bit guessing, but if I run it to what I think is about neutral flap, so Penny's telling me it's much less perceptible the change in the angle of the flap. So we're looking for neutral flap is about where it's really smooth. So what number is that on there? That's on 8. So we don't really need to know that it's on 8. Well, it's useful. So when it's on 8, that's about there. So that's neutral flap. So now I'm looking at the wand position. Look at the wand there, it's quite far forward in its range. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that the wand here is really, really close to the waterline. What have we got there? We've only got this far. So the boat will be falling this close to the surface of the water. Now, that means that a small ripple, and that's not a very big ripple, we sail through that small ripple and the foil comes out of the water and the boat immediately crashes. So I want to move this I'd like to have neutral flap with the wand at about 45 degrees. So approximately speaking, it's around about on our gauge, it's around about 8. But you can have a reasonable gauge of that. That gives us, what's that, more than my whole finger and thumb span of water depth before the foil will breach the water. So I will do that by changing the RYA type control. So at the moment it is, I've got to get this right because this is confusing, I've got to bring the wand back. So I'm going to wind the RYA type forward. Now, yesterday I got all this wrong and we went the wrong direction several times. So that's gone too far. So neutral flap is, we're probably not even at neutral flap yet, are we? No. So I'm going to go a little bit less. It's actually very sensitive, the RYA type control. We're talking about 1 or 2 turns. So are we at 8 yet? So 8 is So we're on my setting here, we're on about 10. So I think I want to be on 8 here. So funny enough, when the gearing's in the middle, we've actually worked out the scale, it should be on 8 and 8, but you don't know that when you're playing with your boat. So I need to go a little bit more flap up. So I'm going to wind this one turn in. I think that I might have gone the wrong direction again. So where are we? There, I went the right way. So this is now where we've got the wand, neutral flap, it's about 45 degrees. Anyone disagree with that angle? Roughly speaking, 45 degrees. And distance to the water line is about this. To be honest with you, in reality, that's really quite close to the water. So probably just the geometry of this setup and the length of the wand means that this works. So in reality, you want to be a bit deeper than that. That's probably the closest you actually want to be to water. So I now know that the wand is in approximately the right position for neutral flap. So the next thing I'm going to check is what the flap does at the extremes of the range. So as the wand comes forward, I want to see the flap come up. And maximum flap up is somewhere right up here, but that's really extreme. That's when the wand comes in front of vertical. If we look at that, Penny, could you just put your hand on the foil and tell us just how that feels? So we've got a distinct curve up on the flap there. Now, if we go and check the next extreme, and I'm calling the join in these two boards the whole line. So we come back to the whole line, what are we looking at there? That's sloping off quite a lot. So that's quite a lot of flap down. So that means we're going to take off really quite quickly, and at the front of the range we've got flap up. So we're guaranteed control. Now, the only thing I think is quite important at this point is, before I launch, I want to ensure that I'm guaranteed not to come crashing out of water. So I'm actually going to wind the right height off an extra turn, just to give me a bit of safety. So I'll wind the right height, shorten the right height for a whole turn again. And now, our number 8 setting is, Penny, can you just see when we're at 8? 8 there. So now this is on a number 6, and we've got, well, more than my handstand. So we've got a nice bit of security on the height that the boat is going to foil. So I'm guaranteed the boat isn't going to crash out of the water when we first sail. So, troubleshooting. We go sailing, we launch and we start sailing. And as in this setup, I would expect it to foil a little bit low, only coming out of the water a little bit. So when I launch like that, I can then tweak my ride height in the boat to give me a little bit of more ride height. So I pull a little bit more ride height when we're sailing to bring the height of the boat falls up to what I would like to be my comfort level. When you come up to your comfort level, you have a really nice sail. Okay, so should we just recap? Effect of the gearing is the amount the flap moves. The effect of the ride height changes the position of the wand relative to the flap. And when we're setting up, we try to find neutral flap. We want the wand about 45 degrees, and then we check that we have flap up when the wand comes forward, and flap down when the wand comes back. Now, what if we don't have that? What if, when the wand is in neutral flap, we don't get flap up when the wand comes forward, and we don't get much flap up when the wand comes back? Well, just have a look, because the gearing will probably change that. So we've got much less gearing now. So wand forward, not so much flap up. Wand back, not so much flap down. So we've got less flap movement. So if you're troubleshooting and you're not getting, you've got wand at 45 degrees on neutral flap, and the wand, you're not getting enough flap up when it comes forward or flap down when it comes back, then the key to that is to adjust your gearing. So you wind the gearing back down again, and if we actually exaggerate this by going, we were on middle gearing when we set it up, we now go to maximum gearing, we'll again see the change. So maximum gearing, can you remember what the number was when the one was forward before? and what we're on now? 20. So we've gone 14 to 20, and back here we were again at 3. So it's a little bit more of a larger range. So that's the gearing. We know the right height adjusts the one position relative to the flap. Okay, so one other thing. Now the next part is getting a little bit more into fine control. What I'd like to look at is how much where in one range the maximum flap movement occurs. So if we look at this now, as I move the one forward, you'll see the flap change very slowly. It stays pretty much down, maybe neutral about there, and then it has a slow uprise. Now, if I was to change what we call a fast point, the fast point is the position of the gearing in here. And again, if you want to have a closer look at this, come and have a look at it after the talk, because that will make a lot more sense. So I'm just going to show you a couple more times. The flap stays down for quite a long period of the one's initial range, and then it has a slow period in the middle and a little rise up at the back. We change the fast point. A little bit fiddly. Now it does change the length of the whole system because you've moved the point where the gearing occurs. So I'm just going to wind that back to. Now we look at when we have a look now where the wander's back at hull level, and it starts to move forward as the boat takes off. It takes lift off really quickly. So the lift comes off almost immediately. In fact, you can almost see that it's almost a linear curve, the amount of the lift comes off the flap as the one moves forward. Now, what's the effect of that when the boat is sailing? Well, what you'll find is the boat takes off and immediately lift is taken off. So it then comes back down again. So it then puts lift back on, the boat lifts up, it comes down again. And you've probably seen boats sailing around, foiling boats, and they porpoising. They're going up and down all the time, up and down, up and down. And when you see the good guys who sail, they sail really level, really flat all the time. And that's often because the fast point here is in the wrong position. Hence the flat movement, it comes off too early. So the boat, it lifts up, the flap comes up, it goes down, the lift comes back on, it goes up. So you have this up and down movement. So if that is one of the factors your boat is suffering from, then this is the solution: is to change the position of the pivot at the front to the one position. Again, it's quite difficult to explain that. It's much clearer to come and have a look at it. And I'll leave the pliers here. You can have a fiddle and move it around as you wish. Okay, so that's the summary of how this system works and my process for ensuring that when I launch the boat, I can go through that process and be sure that the boat's going to sail in a stable and controllable state. And I think at that point I can really open it up to you guys to ask any questions if you've got any questions or want to have a look in closer detail. Penny, thank you very much. That's really kind of you, and thanks for your help. Silence. Awkward silence. Pardon? So the question is how does that integrate with the rudder? Well, often or not on the rudder you've got an angle and you can control the angle of the rudder. So how does this integrate with the rudder? Well, this is going to control how high the boat flies. The rudder is going to control the pitch of the boat during the flight. Now, if you don't have enough rudder lift on, the boat will try and foil with the bow up. So, and if it does that, then the bow will come up, the wand will come forward, and you will have and the flap will come down, and then the flap comes up, the boat starts porpoising again because it hasn't got anything to push against. So ideally you sail with the boat level. This controls the right eye, and you wind the rudder forwards or to create more rudder lift to level the boat out. How do you know if you haven't got enough rudder lift? Well, the front of the boat will be really floating. So when you're sailing along, the front of the boat will feel like it's got a mind of its own. It will wander on its own, probably because it's free to move. And the one comes forward, the lift comes off, it comes back, the lift goes on. Not as extreme as it is when you've got the thrust point in the wrong place, but it will feel, you'll get the sensation of like the bow is floating. So a little bit more rudder lift, and then you'll feel the bow get really, really solid. Does that answer your question? More or less? Largely independently, yeah. I agree from the speaker. The question was, do you do the rudder independently of this? And the question is yes. The answer is yes. It's not. There's quite a complex scenario. So if your rudder, presuming your rudder angle, the range you have in your rudder is in the correct place, then it is independent. It is not entirely independent, but within a range, you use this as the ride height and the control and the rudder to do the pitch.